Yeah, I tried stand-up comedy once. It did not go as nearly as well as you might think. Today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanek and I'm a big fan of yous. So I won't go into all the details of how I became a fairly decent public speaker other than to say that I put in my 10,000 hours in that regard. I kicked off my speaking career in earnest when I worked at the SEC, my second tour of duty in the mid-90s, where you might find me speaking on how this new thing called the internet impacted the securities law, or how Y2K must be addressed in public company disclosure. It got to the point where I had a speaking gig from the government office that I was in on average of about once a week. That's a lot. Then I left the SEC and I continued to do quite a bit of speaking until I purposefully shut it all down about 8 years ago. I was still serving as the master of ceremonies at my own annual conference. I was hosting about 20 webcasts per year, taping podcasts with various people. I figured our community probably had enough exposure to me. So I stopped accepting speaking offers, and once you start saying no, you stop being asked, and there's nothing wrong with that. Dude, you told them way more than they want to know. Right. Anyway, I remember what I consider the height of my public speaking career. I'm a connoisseur about this kind of thing since I do event planning for a living as one of the hats that I wear. So I grade myself each time that I speak. So I'm well aware of when I perform admirably and when I bomb. Anyway, I was the luncheon speaker for the Essentials program in Orlando for the Society for Corporate Governance, back then known as the Society of Corporate Secretaries. And being the luncheon speaker meant that it was a monologue. And in my judgment, I should err more on the side of entertainment rather than education. So I decided to do a bit about the SEC staff, working in some stories from when I was serving on the staff and some of the quirky things that comes with working for the SEC. I loosely sketched out my remarks intended to be humorous and just kind of wung it. And boy, I had them rolling in the aisles. My timing was impeccable. My content was hilarious. It was the perfect set. I had so much fun hearing the roars, the guffaws from the crowd. So that happened about 17, 18 years ago. And as a result of my success then, I then had the bug. I wanted to do more stand-up, except this time I would be more prepared. I would not just wing it. So about 5 years later, I emailed an Irish bar in the DC area and I volunteered to be part of their open mic stand-up. And I received an email back that I was accepted. Now, bear in mind that I had never been to an open mic stand-up, so I had no idea about what the setup was, how it all worked, and I dutifully prepared my 3 minutes of material. That was the limit imposed on me, 3 minutes, and I showed up very early as requested. You're supposed to get early. There was a total of 10 of us, and I was in my mid-40s at the time, and the other 9 would-be comics ranged from the ages of 21 to 25, a young group. My wife and dad came down early too, and they got a table down right in front. So as showtime neared, I was shocked to see the bar fill up to the gills. They had an overflow area outside in the patio, also crowded, where speakers were placed so they could hear our routines. It was a Wednesday night, and I had banked on there being maybe a dozen people in the audience, at the most. I went fourth in the rotation out of 10, and I was crapping my pants. Since I was so deliberate in my remarks, I tried to memorize them, thinking that was essential for my timing, and my memory ain't just that good. My memory ain't that good. So I was preoccupied with that, saying my lines in precisely the order that I had planned, and that really handicapped me. And my sketch was mostly fictional, some fake humor about my mom being on drugs. It just wasn't great. It did not go well. And that's not to say my fellow comics were all that hot either. This is open mic. Among the 10, I actually was ranked probably somewhere in the middle. There was some pretty bad stuff there. There were a few professional comics, young comics as part of our group, but they were just trying out new material and literally read off index cards they were reading. And if people weren't laughing at a particular storyline, they just abruptly tossed away that index card and went on to their next one. But a few of the comics really were funny. One professional comic just came in off the street unplanned. He wasn't in the rotation of 10, and they squeezed him in, and his stuff was among the funniest I've actually ever heard. He wasn't reading from an index card. It was just a sketch he had about sex. And nearly all the material delivered by the other comics were also about relationships, about sex. And there were kernels of truth, of real experience in his comedy. And I've since learned that the best stand-up is based on real life, that the audience can instinctively know, instinctively discern whether you're speaking from truth deep down. And that somehow makes it much funnier for them. That completely memorizing the lines is helpful, but that there needs to be room for some improv to play off the energy in the room. So I haven't ventured back onto the stage for stand-up yet, but maybe one day I will. Let me know what you think.